Hello! Today I've got another fairy tale look for you. This time it's Hansel and Gretel, which actually is one of the first fairy tales that I remember ever hearing about. I started out with this Gelaze, China Glaze Gelaze nail polish, with which I'll leave the name down below because I can't remember what the name was. Also the China Glaze top coat, a buffing block from Born Pretty store. Lots of acrylic paint, which I got off a set of bol.com. Just really cheap acrylic paint, and also a nail art brush from eBay. Well, not from eBay, but bought via eBay. Just a really cheap one. And yeah, first thing I did was actually, after obviously applying the base, is buffing the nails. I actually did the whole base color and the gel top coat on top of that the day before. So, it was all cured and all like sticky layer was wiped off. So I had to buff it so the top coat in the end will actually grab onto the nail rather than just sort of flake off, which looks weird and isn't not what I was trying to go for. Also, acrylic paint is easier to work with on a matte surface because it just slides less easily. Stays in place better. So yeah, I'm pretty sure everyone knows this fairy tale, like it's one of the most well-known fairy tales, but in each and every of my fairy tale nail tutorials, I actually end up just telling the entire fairy tale. So yeah, I'll do that this time as well. The story is about a boy and a girl. They're, brother and sister. And yeah, in some stories they actually live with both their parents. In some stories they have a stepmother and a father. But either way, yeah, they're really, really poor. They don't have enough money. And yeah, they just don't have food to, actually supply for a family of four. So, instead of asking for help or getting a second job or something like that, the mother or stepmother, depending on the story, actually decides that it's the best idea in the world to just leave the children in the woods and just let them die there so they don't cost money anymore. Because that's obviously a perfectly normal thing to do in fairy tale world. So yeah, Hansel actually hears it through the open door because obviously you discuss stuff like that while the people you want to kill are actually there. That wasn't a smart move, he heard, so he actually went outside and grabbed a bunch of little rocks. So the next day their father took them deep into the woods, but Hansel actually left the little rocks everywhere on the track. So they could actually find the way back home once their father left them alone. However, their mother or stepmother obviously wasn't very happy with that because she didn't want to see them back ever, obviously. So they decided to try again the next day, like the stepmother and father actually decided to try again the next day to leave the children out in the woods. Only this time the stepmother actually locked the door so Hansel couldn't get out to grab rocks. So instead he tried to do the same thing with breadcrumbs left over from breakfast. But obviously that didn't turn out all that well because, birds ate the breadcrumbs, so the children had no way of finding their way back home. Which left them wandering the woods, completely lost, obviously. And that's when they encountered a little house made of candy. That was like seriously my favorite thing about the entire fairy tale. The whole image of the house completely made of candy and cake and cookies and just all sort of nice things. So yeah, they actually contemplated getting inside. Although obviously they probably found it sort of weird to find a house completely built up of candy. And then an old lady actually came out of the house and invited them in. The old lady, of course, was the witch, but the children didn't know that before. They actually got into the house, and the witch then proceeded to lock Hansel up in a cage, and then force Gretel into actually becoming sort of housekeeper for her. And yeah, she actually tried to make Hansel as fat as possible so she could eat him. But the witch was actually, like, her eyes were really bad, and apparently glasses don't actually exist in fairy tale world for some reason. And apparently, even though she was a witch, she couldn't magic her eyes to be better. So yeah, she just really had very crappy eyesight, and she could barely even see Hansel. So whenever she told him to stick out his finger so she could feel if he was already getting fat and plump, he actually stuck a chicken bone out of the bars of his cage, so she felt that and, kept thinking that he was still thin and inedible. Just really to procrastinate on being eaten, obviously, because he probably wasn't looking forward to it. But eventually, of course, the witch got tired of waiting and just wanted to eat him right now. So yeah, then she proceeded to try to switch on the oven, and that's really where a witch should know better than to play with fire. Witches should not play with fire because witches usually end up burnt in such cases. As was the case this time, because Gretel was actually pretty smart, so she figured, hey, I'll just pretend like I don't know how an oven works. It was one of those old-timey ovens, of course, because it's a fairy tale, where you actually had to light a match and actually light up the oven while leaning into the oven, which is seriously dangerous, and I'm glad we don't have ovens like that anymore. So yeah, Gretel pretended to not understand how it worked, and the witch actually leaned in to, you know, switch on the oven herself, at which Gretel, of course, pushed her into the now, you know, flaming hot oven, and actually closed the door behind her so the witch couldn't get out anymore. So while the witch was burning to death in her own oven, Gretel actually, you know, managed to open the cage that Hansel was in, free him, and yeah, this really was where the fairy tale sort of differs per story. In some stories, he just went home and, you know, just life went on as usual without any money. In other stories, they actually found out that the witch had some sort of really very, very precious treasure, and they brought that home, so they never had money issues again, even though they maybe still lived with their stepmother who wanted them dead. But that's beside the point. So yeah, that's pretty much how the fairy tale ends. Like I said, as a child, it's like seriously one of the first fairy tales that I ever remember being read. And, you know, I was really liked the fairy tale, mainly just because of the candy house, even though in hindsight it's a pretty gruesome story with a little girl burning a witch to death. But yeah, so yeah, in terms of, by the way, the whole nail art, I just obviously painted it on with acrylic paint and then used a gel top coat to seal it all, just to make sure the colors actually stay on there. And then, yeah, that's the final result. Even though the children sort of turned out looking like aliens, I really need to practice at drawing people. I do really like how this turned out. I hope you enjoyed watching this. If you did, please click the like button, and you can also always subscribe to my channel if you'd like. For now, thank you very much for watching, and see you next time. Bye!